In the true spirit of journalism, let's tackle some storylines ahead of the season.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today, we're going to talk about, what I think will be the three biggest storylines as of right now. I mean, we have not even played 2 regular season games, but I think, this is a more fun predictions. It's not about how people are necessarily playing and criticizing the power play or the penalty kill. These are stories that you can kind of follow along with the season if you're interested, or kind of use them as a reference point, because I just really enjoy digging into these things and looking at them through different lenses. Make sure you are subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. By the time you're listening to this, I am in the air on my way to Calgary for Saturday's home, or actually technically the Wranglers home opener tonight, and then tomorrow is the Flames home opener. So I'm looking forward to that. But what else are we looking forward to this year? Could it be Huberdeau's year? I think that this is going to remain a very large storyline for this entire contract. Obviously, $10.5 million is a lot of money. There is nothing the Flames can do about it. It is not a movable contract. You don't save any money, really, if you buy it out. And we know that the first 2 years were not good. Obviously, he had 55 points his first year, and then last year he finished with less at 52. So what happens this year to make it a better year? What happens to the Huberdeau that everyone was really excited to get from Florida? What is working? If he is finding that success, what's working, and maybe what wasn't working? I think a big proponent of this is truly just the style of hockey that Florida played versus what Calgary plays. I really enjoyed watching Huberdeau on Wednesday night, and I thought that him scoring it's a good thing, obviously, but it's nice to see. It's nice to see, and kind of starts him off on the right foot. I am really curious to see if this is his year that he settles in. Why? Well, because of the altitude change, and I understand. It shouldn't take this long, right? I mean, I don't know. I've never been in the Rocky Mountains, but I know that Blake Coleman had referenced how it took him a bit to settle in, and like 2 seasons to really settle in and buckle down because of how the altitude change was impacting him. And that's just something that's stuck with me. And it's not an excuse. It's not like, oh, well, he's just not following like the nutrition plan, or, he's being a diva and not showing up to practice, or like something like that. That is an external force that affects everyone differently. So I do wonder if there is something with that. But I also wonder if he approaches this season a little differently. We saw him, kind of throwing hits last year and getting in on like the little scrums, and even against the Canucks, he was throwing hits and involved in scrums. And so I'm curious to see if that carries over through the season, what kind of year does he have, and will it be better than the last two? I said in my predictions, and I think during preseason hockey, that he's going to have about 65 points. I'll take it. I hope he hits that and then some. I think something that you're like, he's never going to play like a $10.5 million player in Calgary. That is very obvious. I mean, is it possible he maybe hits up to 80 points again? Maybe. I think anything's possible, and especially if you find the right combination, you'll get it, and he'll get it. But it is a matter of things happening and falling into place. Like against the Canucks, he had one pass that just went into not where it was intended to go, and it threw everything off. So I do think that kind of drilling down and like being more thoughtful but not thinking too much is going to be a big factor in his success this season. And I mean, hey, if you want to start chirping the refs too, because he was getting a little mouthy with the refs, I will say, from the bench. Understandably so. That so many messy situations there. But coming up next, we're going to talk about the trade deadline. And, now that they've traded Markstrom and Mangiapane, do they necessarily need to put an emphasis on selling at the deadline? But we will be right back after this. We are driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/locked on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. You need to hire, you need Indeed. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. I hope you're having a fantastic week, and you can follow me on Twitter at Jess Belmosto. Craig Conroy's rookie season as a general manager is like one for the history books. I don't like, there weren't many, if any, swings and misses when it came to the trades. I don't think that he took really less than what he deserved on any of them. Yeah, sure, maybe the returns are kind of underwhelming at the time, but like things can still pan out. I don't necessarily think it's doomsday at the immediate sight of the return. But with last season's pending UFAs behind us, where does that leave us this year? Andrew Mangiapane was not going to re-sign long-term in Calgary, so the Flames traded him to Washington. And obviously, Jacob Markstrom wasn't a pending free agent, but they did need to move some cap space, and they got they didn't yeah, they got Kevin Ball and a first-round pick from the Devils. So, I would call Markstrom the elephant in the room more than Mangiapane. I think Mangiapane's was just, bound to happen. But, yeah, they got the elephant out of the room out of the way. And they took care of Mangiapane. Now, this upcoming these players will be UFAs at the end of this season. Kevin Rooney, Anthony Mantha, Andrei Kuzmenko, Joel Hanley, and Tyson Barrie. Now, 2 of those names are immediately attractive to teams at the deadline, and that would be Anthony Mantha and Andrei Kuzmenko. Both of them are good players. I think that Kuzmenko was able to find his game again by coming to Calgary, which is fantastic. I think that that's, something he needed, and obviously the Flames have benefited from him being here. I do not see them signing him long term. I don't even know if they should go for 4 years. I feel like 4 years is a little bit too long there, but is this a player that if he continues down the path of success, is he going to, is Craig Conroy going to get some phone calls about him? More than likely, even if he isn't playing 10 out of 10 superstar hockey, if he is still doing enough to where teams are we need someone like that for our playoff run, by all means, and you should be answering the phone pretty much on anyone. But I do think that Kuzmenko, I would make sense to trade, as well as Mantha. And I say this after one game, but he's on a 1-year deal. He's older. He has what the Flames need in terms of toughness, grit, and offensive ability. But is he taking the roster spot of a player that should be there? I would say right now, no. Matt Coronado should be playing, but that is what it is. I'm very I don't have any reservations about Anthony Mantha. I feel like he is the perfect candidate for a deadline flip. He was picked up traded to Vegas at the deadline and then signed in Calgary for a year. So, he very well could just stick out the year with Calgary. I don't think that that's anything wrong, but I think the Flames would absolutely benefit from trading him at the deadline. And it's probably something that they will explore. I don't think that they're going to be shying away from anything, but it's not a fire sale like last season. Joel Hanley is a fine defenseman. Good 7th or 8th defenseman, depending on your depth. But I wouldn't be shocked if a team traded for him, really. But I also I think that could go either way because he's a good depth piece, plays very good defense, has that offensive edge a little bit. So, if you were looking for a player like that, let's say Luke Hughes gets hurt or isn't healthy for the playoffs. Joel Hanley, what a guy. I also don't know anything about New Jersey's situation, just naming a random team. But in all seriousness, I also wouldn't be shocked if teams call on Tyson Barrie. I wouldn't, simply because he has that veteran playoff experience and played his way into a contract. Second round pick, maybe a third, whatever you want. Kevin Rooney, I think he's 31, 32 now. So I feel like based on where the Flames are at in their process of retooling, rebuilding, reconstruction, I don't think it makes sense for him to resign in Calgary. And Steph, if you're listening, I'm so sorry to say that. I like Kevin Rooney. I think he's great. I think that he is someone that really embodies that what it means to be a Flame, because you're Kevin Rooney, and like, you fought for this and you've worked hard, and people are going to say what they want to say. And I'm glad that he's playing on the fourth line. I think it makes more sense for size and depth purposes at this very moment. I hope that he is doing okay and will be back in game time action soon, because that hit, I'm sorry, that is going to bother me for a very long time. Just the way he hit his head. I did not like that. But I personally don't see him being traded. I don't think it would make sense. I think that he's waived. If for the Wranglers, and that is what it is, if he's waived at all. So we'll have to keep an eye out there. I just think that Kuzmenko, Barrie, and Mantha are more likely trade candidates than, I would say even Mantha and Barrie more than Kuzmenko at this current moment. But we are still months and months away from that. So let's not get too ahead of ourselves here. But coming up next, we are going to wrap up the show with what I think is going to be another big storyline. Why it's going to be a big storyline coming up here on Locked On Flames. Hey, NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-plays, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. I would put, tonight Jeremy Swayman's in net, so bet the under for the Bruins Blackhawks. I would say actually don't bet the over, because I don't think Chicago has very good goaltending, but I also know the Bruins are afraid to shoot the puck. So maybe you do Elias Lindholm 3 shots on goal, Nikita Zadorov anytime score, something fun. Put a nice fun parlay together for yourself on FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to today's episode of Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. I think this is like the ultimate storyline for this season, and that is, of course, integrating the youth. How do they do integrating the kids? And what about, I think everyone has been waiting for this for so long, and it's finally happening. And it's unfortunate that it took all of this to get here. I feel like with Craig Conroy and Ryan Huska in charge, there has been a true philosophical change. And that is something that I wish people would write about. I wish people would do like an in-depth piece on, why the Flames are making these choices and not just like the surface level answers. I want to know more behind their thought process. But I do think the biggest player that they're going to be focusing on is, of course, Dustin Wolf. Dustin Wolf has the pedigree that all goalies would die for. However, he has not had a very hot start in the NHL. And not necessarily his fault or it is his problem. But when you have Swiss cheese defense playing in front of you, what are you going to do? You got to work harder, and sometimes you're just going to get beat out. And I do think that he is going to be like a main focus this season, and I don't necessarily think it's going to be like a distraction, but I feel like, now with Jacob Markstrom traded, his spot is there. So how are the Flames going to make sure they get this transition right? How are they going to set Dustin Wolf up for success? And then I feel like the other two are kind of, they're a duo, and that would be Connor Zary and Martin Pospisil. I think that Connor Zary is just going to have an incredible year. I think that he started off fantastic last season and carried that momentum through. For his rookie season, that was unexpected. Like, I am truly impressed, and I think people are going to want to see more of what they saw last year, and they're going to be looking for it. They're going to want it. Martin Pospisil, I think, kind of the same thing here. Like, he's very skilled. Do not get me wrong. He is very skilled, but he has that little bug in him that makes him a pest. He did get suspended last year. He has had many concussions to the point where he thought his hockey career was going to end really before it started. So I hope that he is more conscious this year and he's not in the headlines for those reasons. Also, Sam Honzik, I think he's going to pop up in the headlines, as well as Hunter Brustowicz. People are talking so much about him, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he brings to the table for the Wranglers and just what his first year as a pro looks like. I do worry, though, that, these are all athletes. They know what they're signing up for. But I feel like Dustin Wolf is kind of at an advantage because I would say Calgary is more of like a quieter market in terms of media. I think all of these guys are kind of lucky it's not like a Toronto, because that there would be no joy in hockey if that's how all the markets acted. And I think, of course, like, there's always going to be reporters are always going to ask what seem like dumb questions. But there's typically a purpose for it. So hopefully, it doesn't get clipped and they get mocked. But I think Dustin Wolf will eventually catch more of the national media's attention. I'm hoping that the same thing happens with Connor Zary. I think that Zary is truly going to turn out to be an incredible player, and the Flames are going to be so lucky to have him. And let's lock him up and get that job done. Pospisil is a great hockey player. However, I feel like we're going to see him in the headlines more for silly things rather than his hockey things on some occasions. And I hope that he kind of outgrows that. But I think it's fair for all of these things that we've talked about today to be the storylines of the season, because the Flames are rebuilding. They have a very expensive contract on the books for a player that was a superstar in Florida and has done a 180 and they're also trying to integrate these kids, and you really need to look at how you're doing that and is it going well? And I think that's going to be one of the biggest tests this season is navigating what benchmarks you're looking for every player to hit for the young kids. Because when do you decide, like, how many chances does, let's say, I'm picking on him, but Coronado, if he, if he's just generating turnovers, how many opportunities does he get to like correct himself? And like, how many games is that? But I mean, ultimately, we're going to find out throughout the season, and I'm looking forward to whatever unfolds this year. I think it's going to be a good year. Good year. I don't know if that means making the playoffs. But I think a good year includes draft lottery. And that's okay. That's where the Flames want to be. That is where they need to be in order to build back what they had. So that will do it for me here on today's episode of Locked On Flames. I hope you all had a fantastic week and enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the Flames home opener. And then, of course, on Sunday is the first Battle Alberta of the season. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. Your Calgary Flames every day. Bye-bye.